In the following tutorial, I'm going to give you 8 cold process recipes that are all crafted to be just a little bit different for different soap making designs. This series of videos can be found in a playlist on Thermal Mermaid YouTube channel, beginning with lesson 2.1 all the way to lesson 2.10. Now make sure you get all the recipes in this series, so click the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of these videos. Now if you want to print these recipes and instructions, you can easily find them listed in the Thermal Mermaid Soap Makers Course and Resource Library in Lesson 2, hence why I have them labeled here on YouTube as 2.1 to 2.10. But if you're not a member of our full Soap Makers course, you can still get all of the content and printables for free, posted over in my Facebook group. That's labeled at Thermal Mermaid Soap and Bath Making. Now, this is free for anyone to join, and if you just want to ask questions about beginning soap making or you just want to show me your creations, then I welcome anybody to come over there and just join for fun. Now, this 10-part playlist is organized with a specific idea in mind. It covers the biggest questions that I had when I was trying to do creative things with cold process soap making. It is for beginners. Now there are some basics which include how to make different designs and textures, and then there are the challenges, like which recipes will allow me to do those different designs and textures, and what to do when things turn out differently than expected. This playlist will cover all the info that I had to hunt for when I was learning how to make cold process soap and put things in order from basic to a little bit more complex. Lesson 2.1 assumes that you know how soap is made and you have reviewed the safety and first aid instructions in working with the chemicals involved in soap making. Now, if you do not, stop right here and watch the playlist for Lesson 1, which covers those important details. So let's get started. Lesson 2.1, Base Cold Process Recipe and Oils. So far you know that as long as all of your oils have been completely saponified, there's no longer any oil left in the product, but instead it's changed into soap. So why then do you see recipes that call for different oils? Why don't they all just produce the same product? Well, they do all produce soap, but the properties of your soap will be different, and you'll want to craft your recipe depending on the type of bar that you're making. So let's look at these examples. You'll be working with both hard oils and soft oils. Hard oils are solid at room temperature, and soft oils are liquid at room temperature. They'll produce either a hard or soft bar of soap, and you'll want a finished product that's somewhere in between, which is why we blend a combination of oils. Here is a piece of soap made from 100% lard, as shown from the demonstration in Lesson 1. And here's a piece of soap made from 100% olive oil, also known as Castile soap. And finally, we have a piece of soap made from 100% soybean oil, which I wouldn't recommend. It's a very light, soft colored soap. Watch what happens when we cut into each bar. The lard soap is very brittle and it shatters when we cut. It won't be possible to cut this from a large loaf mold if it's been left to cure for too long. Olive oil is also a hard and brittled soap when it's cured. Although these are commonly made in loaves and cut, Castile soap takes a lot longer to cure, and so they're easily cut into pieces. But once this has cured, it also becomes very brittle. Now finally, our vegetable oil soap is very different. It's soft and it smudges easily. Now this soap will melt on a hot day, and it'll turn into a blob if you leave it in a sunny windowsill. So how do we know where to start when we're crafting a cold process soap recipe? Well, for our first recipe, we're going to jump right into a base recipe, and we need to cover a few checkpoints. Now, you'll find hundreds of varieties of recipes. Now, some can get pretty exotic, but if you start to make a large number of products, you're going to want to use a base recipe for most of your bars, and then just adjust your recipe for some of your specialty ingredients. So, of course, what do you want in a base recipe? Let's go down our checklist. First, and most importantly, you want a beautiful finished product that you can cut, wrap, handle, and store without it falling apart. Now it must be stored in a cool, dry place, and it must also be resilient so that you can pull it out 2 months later to fill an order if you need to. Second, your base recipe also has to make sense economically. The more expensive and luxurious your oils are, the more you have to charge for that finished product. The oils for your base recipe need to be inexpensive enough so that you can make a super batch, or a large amount, and then store it for when you're ready to pour. And finally, your base recipe in cold process soap making needs to be one that leaves you enough time to do your work. Harder oils thicken more quickly than soft oils, and this means you'll have less time to work with your colors and designs if you choose more hard oils in your recipe. So your best base recipe needs to stay thin long enough for you to have time to do the creative part. So let's get started with our base recipe for lesson 2. For this lesson, we're making our lilac and lavender bar. We'll use a 3-pound mold, which will be cut into 11 pieces. The recipe is a very medium texture soap base with a practical combination of oils that will end up producing a nice bar that lathers very nicely. This recipe will consist of 40% vegetable oil. Now make sure your vegetable oil is a corn oil base, not a soybean. This does make a big difference. 30% olive oil, 20% coconut oil, 5% castor oil, and 5% shea butter. We'll be using Lavender Flowers fragrance oil from Nature's Garden, and this will be a 3-color blend: white, lavender, and lilac. And remember, if you're printing this recipe from the members directory, you'll find the recipe and the instructions ready to print at the link just below the tutorial video. And please let me know in the comments below if you find the printable material helpful for the projects that you're working on. I want to make it as easily accessible as possible so that you don't have to sit here and write everything down with a tutorial. You can just pop over and print it out. So it is helpful for me to know whether or not that's a useful thing for you guys to have so that I know to make more of these in the future. So let's get started. First, we'll prepare our lye water solution with 18.14 ounces of cold distilled water and 6.24 ounces of sodium hydroxide lye crystals. Second, we'll melt and combine all of our oils. We want these 2 bowls to be as close to the same temperature as possible. 100 degrees is good. We will combine these and mix our water and oils just well enough for it to emulsify. Once you see that slick oil sheen on the surface of your soap disappear, you know that the 2 parts are becoming completely combined. Now in this recipe, I'm going to take you all the way through the thin trace to a thick trace and show you what that looks like. This design simply layers the colors on top of each other, so if our soap is so thick that we need to spoon it into the mold, then so be it. Next, we'll add the fragrance and mix this in well, and we'll separate the batter into 3 equal parts, coloring each part white, lavender, and lilac. For the purple, we're using Cosmetic grade mica, which naturally blends very smoothly. The white is titanium dioxide, and we need to blend this down in oil first before adding it into the batter to get the powdered colorant to disperse smoothly. Once the colors have been blended into the soap, mix the cream and dark purple together to get a halfway soft lilac color. Now we have our 3 perfect colors. Take a look at the texture of the dark purple. This is what it looks like when the soap has made it to a medium trace, and here it's been mixed for about 5 minutes with the stick blender. Now if we let the soap get any thicker than this, it'll start to become difficult to pour into the mold. So it's time to make our transfer. Pour the batter into the mold, rotating the colors until there is nothing left. Finally, give your finished product a bit of a swirl with a stick or a spoon and mix lightly. Now we'll set this aside and come back in 24 hours to see the result. Now that the loaf is set, we'll take a look at the finished product. And here is the finished bar of lavender flowers with your base recipe.